For me, the men we're supposed to have children with. I'll wait. I'm not saying that there aren't good men out there, and I never want to generalize because that's not.
So there's been a conversation going on within the Caribbean circle, I would say within the past 2 to 3 years, about a low birth rate crisis in the Caribbean. And this is coming from a region that 30 years ago, they were complaining that people were having too much kids, especially out of wedlock. So my question is the fact that people are being more responsible now and having less kids, is that really a crisis? Let's talk about it. Okay, so as I said, this has been an ongoing conversation within the Caribbean circle for the past 2 to 3 years about a low birth rate crisis going on in the Caribbean region. And I decided to talk about it today because recently a prominent journalist from Jamaica, Diane Jackson Miller, she decided to bring up the topic on her YouTube channel, and it put back the conversation on the table about this idea of a low birth rate within the Caribbean, and is this really a crisis? So this is from Diane Jackson Miller talking about it from the angle of Jamaica, a low birth rate crisis in Jamaica.
All right, so who remembers two is better than too many? It was a birth control campaign back in the day in the 1970s, and the idea was, as it sounds, to try to convince women that it was better to have 2 children than too many. And the commercial which was carried on TV showed a woman who we were told used to be a maths brain back in primary school, except she had too many children. And she is now walking door to door begging for them. And then she buck up on a woman who she used to help back in primary school, except that the woman only had 2 children. So now she had the good. She have house and ring and family and all kind of things. While poor Miss Matsbrain now, having had too many children, is reduced to begging. So very clear message there.
Two is better than too many, yes. No go around and get a lot of baby.
And it looked like said Jamaican women took the campaign to heart, and they're now saying Jamaica is in problems.
Okay, so what are my thoughts on this? I think that this is what you call a manufactured crisis. I think a low birth rate in Jamaica is not a crisis at all, because when you look at Jamaica in 2025, there's still a lot of Jamaicans without jobs. A lot of Jamaicans are sitting home, not working. So to say that the low birth rate it's going to affect employment, I don't buy into it. And I'm always careful of government trying to get involved in people's bedroom. I am always concerned about that. So I do not see this as a crisis. And one of the things too is that if you're even going to think that there's going to be a shortage of workers, that is what immigration is for. There are a lot of people in Africa, there are a lot of people in Asia, all over the world that see Jamaica as a destination that they would love to go to Jamaica. So immigration could always solve any shortage of the labor force. So I don't think this is a crisis.
Well, yes, the numbers said that our birth rate is falling. Now, they said Jamaica's total fertility rate is coming from 4.5 births per woman between 1973 and 1975 to 1.9 births per woman in 2021. Oh, that's a big drop, you know. Now, it sounds weird to be talking about 1.9 babies or 4.5 babies, but the 1.9 is actually important because what it means is that we're not having enough babies in the society to replace the adult population.
So I don't know about you, but when I look at the low childbirth rate in Jamaica, I don't see it as a crisis. What I see it as is progress. Because when you look at the numbers and when you look between 1972 and 1975, when Jamaica recorded some of the highest birth rate in Jamaica, that was when Jamaica was on the verge of collapse. The nation was on the verge of collapse right during the time when the Michael Manley era, when Michael Manley was going up against the American government. Fast forward to 2025, the difference between 1975 and 2025 is that Jamaica has a way more educated workforce. So there are people that are more educated. There are people that are making better decisions for their life. In 1975, there was a thing called barefoot and pregnant. 2025, women are choosing to have their careers and to have a better life. Women are no longer choosing to be barefoot and pregnant. So I don't see this as a crisis. And this is mind-boggling to me when in 2025, and we're talking about the real issue of people losing their jobs to AI. And at the same time, now we're talking about that a low childbirth rate in Jamaica or in the Caribbean is going to affect things. So that is just mind-boggling to me. Like, how can it be that we are worried about not having enough jobs and about people losing their jobs to AI, and at the same time we're complaining now and saying people are choosing to have less kids and that is going to affect the Caribbean or Jamaica right now? Doesn't make sense to me.
I think Jamaican women seem to be having fewer children.
It's anecdotal for me, but I think that more women are just focused on their professional life, whether that is going to school to get their degree or their masters or even their doctorates. Or just don't want to spend the time in them yard or take care of them again.
Yes, so I think this gentleman just made a valid point that there are more women in the Caribbean now, in particular in Jamaica, that they're choosing their career first. And that is their choice. They have a choice to make and they're choosing like, look, my career is going to come first. I'm going to choose education, getting educated to get in a certain field. And I'm in this field now and I want to maximize it. And that is their choice to make. So that is very important to note that, look, in 2025 compared to 1975, women have more options of being in the workplace. Women in the Caribbean are holding top offices in banking, in insurance, even in law. There are more women lawyers now coming out of the Caribbean than men. So that is very important to note.
So this whole thing about women not having children is not necessarily a one-size-fits-all situation, but I do think the reasons run along similar veins. I mean, let's be real. Traditionally, women were homemakers and men were providers, but the unfortunate and sad truth in 2025 is that a lot of men have stepped back from the role of being providers. I grew up in a single-parent home, so I can say that.
I think if we are to be very honest, in the Caribbean, we don't have a low birth rate crisis in the Caribbean. I think the real issue in the Caribbean is that we're not having families, and that affects everything. We see the entire Caribbean in like an epidemic right now in terms of crime and violence in the Caribbean. And I think instead of focusing on a low birth rate, we need to talk about the family structure, bringing the family structure together. And as this young lady alluded to, that she grew up in a single parent home. And one of the things I realized when we're talking about single parent home, men gets a bulk of the blame. But the reality is that it takes two to tango, and not every single parent home is because of what the men did. Sometimes women have to be accountable in certain situations too, because yes, a lot of time men will run out on their family, but there are also times when women would make bad decisions that end up with them being a single parent. And that is just the reality, and I don't think we talk about that enough. So in my opinion, we don't have a low birth rate crisis, we have a family crisis. Men and women in the Caribbean are not coming together. They're not getting married, they're not co-parenting the way they should be, and I think that is where the focus is supposed to be. Instead of talking about a birth rate, because traditionally, and in the Caribbean, not just Jamaica, but it can be said for right across the Caribbean, traditionally, most of the childbirth within the Caribbean, it comes from the lower income people within the Caribbean. For my entire lifetime, most women that are in corporate jobs, maximum, they will have 2 kids. If they are in a good job, they have a good marriage, a good relationship, they will have 2 kids. When you see, like I've never seen anyone in a corporate space having 10 and 12 kids, but when you go to certain rural parts where it's not as developed, or when you go to certain areas that the level of education is not the same, it is very commonplace to see a woman with 10 kids. It's very commonplace to see 6 and 7. So I believe that that is where the conversation should be. Building families and not necessarily just having babies.
My mother, her mother, used to be housewives per se, and that's just not no longer the case for women. More women, and this is more than anecdotal. The university some years ago was 80% women, or 70% women, and that kind of tells you a story without the actual research to back it.
And another very sad truth is that our professions and our work environments a lot of the times don't allow or make available the resources to us to be able to effectively play both roles of being a parent, being a homemaker, and also operating effectively in the workspace. You have one pitney, all right, you're blind, but you want another one, and then it's an inconvenience to your profession.
So what the young lady said, this is a real issue within the Caribbean. When I talk to a lot of women that are professional, and sometimes when they are like on the top of their game and they're going for like a promotion, sometimes they have to choose between that getting a promotion, maximizing their potential or the peak that they have in that company. They're trying to maximize it, and at the same time, something has to give. Either I maximize my time here or go away for maternity leave with a risk that the time that I'm away of having a child, that could compromise my position at the job. So this is a real issue, not only in the Caribbean, but even in America, that is an issue. A lot of women choose not to have kids because that could really hurt their career. And this is something that could easily be fixed by the government, by having a better job security, ensuring that women, when they go off to have kids, that they're not penalized for trying to raise their family. So that is a real issue.
Selfish behavior, though, we hear that the falling birth rate has all kinds of negative implications for the country.
I think that now becomes the job for the government in terms of planning and the next set of generation to come. Was it a case that men were never concerned about women doing what they wanted to do in the past and having out their lot, as a colleague of mine said recently? I don't know. I think it's a serious issue that requires some thinking about for society. In other countries, I know, I think I said it to you the other day, in other countries, some governments pay people to actually have children because birth rate is down. I think China is now moving away from, you used to only be able to have one. That has changed. In Britain, I know, for instance, that there's a consideration that if you have more kids, the government assists with that, and you can check the research on that.
And let's look at the economy. When last you been to the supermarket? You see house price? Have you seen gas prices? I'm basically going to have to choose between bread and Pampers. And bread cheaper, so I have to buy bread. That is just the reality of it. We just cannot afford it. We're struggling to find spaces to lay our heads. Where am I going to put a child? Economically, it's just not feasible. It's just not feasible. And let's call a spade a spade. Gone are the days when people are having children to get off the gelding truck. I will geld for as long as I can geld, because I'm not going to have a child simply because time is running out. If it runs, let it run. There are too many broken homes and too many people suffering from all kinds of childhood trauma because of decisions that were made as a result of getting off the gelding truck. If I were to have a child, no, it's considered geriatric, and that's fine. I'd rather risk the geriatric pregnancy than a struggle with somebody's son over taking care of him, Pitney. I can't do that. Who are the suitors? Show me them. Show me the men we're supposed to have children with. I'll wait.
So what's my conclusion? I think when it comes down to the Caribbean, I don't think that we have a low birth rate crisis within the Caribbean. I think we have a bigger problem than that. I think we have a family crisis. I think we are moving apart. Men and women are moving apart from each other more in the Caribbean than ever before. We have a very low marriage rate within the Caribbean. I think the Caribbean region has one of the lowest marriage and family rate, and that is not good because that leads to all the problems we're seeing in the Caribbean in terms of crime and violence and all of that. So I think we have a bigger problem. Another thing that I think men and women, we're not speaking to each other. We're not speaking at the same level. And I think we're learning as we go, because we are probably in the first and second generation of humanity right now where women are in the workforce at a same level or a higher level than men. And I think our idea of traditionalism, like the traditional roles, have been flipped over on the head, and we just don't know how to deal with it. And in my opinion, I think that we just need to learn as we go. And even with the whole traditionalism, that as much you heard good, and there are also bad that came with being traditional. Women could not vote. Women had no say. They were just home having babies, and men were in control of everything. So the good and the bad was there with that traditional setting. I believe that now in the time that we're living in, when both women and men are in the workplace, I just think that we need to learn to work things out and to work together, to coexist and to build good and strong family. And I think for like someone like Deanne Jackson Miller, because I think that she's married and everything, and within the Caribbean, there are a lot of women that are married in successful relationship and have amazing successful career. So I think when you find women, especially women that are married and they're able to be lawyers, doctors, like judges, everything, and they are able to do that and to have a successful marriage at the same time, I think those women are the ones that young girls need to talk to. Because one of the problems that I've seen in the Caribbean now is that a woman, for example, making 100,000 US dollars would never dare talk to a man that is making 75,000 US dollars. And I think if that is the approach, you would have already lost the battle, because being a man is not just about providing financially. Men can bring more to a relationship than just financial provision. And if women fought for independence and women are now independent and they're able to pay their own bills, I don't think you can claim independence at the same time and turn down a man because he's making less. I think, yes, you can do it. That's your choice. But personally, I think that's a bad choice. And just to give you an idea, like, my wife makes more money than I do. My wife is in one of the top companies in Canada, the top employers in Canada. So she makes better money. But in our marriage, like, we work within our strengths. So if my wife goes off to work, she don't have to worry about picking up the kids. She don't have to worry about coming home and cooking and stuff like that. So if you can find a partner, someone that you can be with, that you complement each other, he might not be making as much money like you're making, but if this is a good man, if this is a man that loves you, he can go pick up the kids so you don't have to spend a lot of money on childcare. He can get food ready until you come home from work, and you just work within your strength. That is where we need to be. So I don't think we have a birth rate crisis. I think we have a family crisis, and we just need to find a way to come together as men and women in the Caribbean and raise good, strong kids that are ready for the future. And that is just my opinion. So sound off in the comment section and let me know what are your thoughts on this one. And I'm going to leave the full clip of Deanne Jackson Miller, her channel. I'm going to leave it in the comment section and you can go and check out the full clip. So don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing content. And remember, peace. I'm out.